It's about how we can change other people's lives in a positive manner, because that is what the victims would have wanted.
Welcome, everybody. I have a fantastic show for you today. I have an amazing, an excellent, an intercontinental champion of filmmaking and documentaries on the show today to discuss her new documentary going to air on HBO, A Tree of Life. Trish Adlesic, how are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. We are going to talk about this new documentary that everybody needs to see. But first, like in The Sound of Music, let's start at the very beginning, shall we? So I'm interested because I went to film school, I went to journalism school, and I started out as a location manager, location scout, producing, doing anything I can. And your resume has some pretty impressive feature films on it, such as Law and Order, Meet Joe Black, As Good as It Gets, Basketball Diaries. Where did it all begin for you in the film business? Was it something you saw on your parents' television? What was the spark? Where did it all begin?
Well, it's very interesting that you take note of the history of my work, because my father worked for a music company, ASCAP, and we were very much exposed to the arts growing up and many different cultures. And I was the youngest, and all my siblings had really diverse interests, and I was very much influenced by that. But I studied classical music in Squirrel Hill as a child and really wanted to be a singer. And I came to New York on an international media scholarship, and I did some internships, and my first internship was at VH1, and I was doing on-air promotions with Anita Baker. And the first day on the job, I dropped it. I was so nervous, and so like impressed and like in gaga for Anita, that I dropped like a 1-inch, those big reels on my toe and broke it, So I was like, oh, this is getting off to an awful start. But it was in the late 80s, early 90s, New York City was a very different place. But I was raised with, having courage and really wanting to be a part of life and be a part of telling stories. And I was very taken by, these various opportunities that I was coming into contact with in New York with other women producers, fortunately. And I also was a location manager, you may have noticed. I did a lot of different jobs. I was a post-production supervisor, a coordinator, and was able to work with some really incredible directors, Michael Mann on The Insider, James L. Brooks on As Good as It Gets, Sidney Lumet. I had the honor of working with Night Falls in Manhattan. And, you get to be a part of the director's team, and you learn a lot by watching. I did that for many years. I did the pilot for Law and Order, and I did a few seasons there, and I knew it was going to be a hit and go for many years. And I wanted to get out and get more experiences. So I left that. And then there was a spinoff called Law and Order SVU. And I decided that would be, I was interested in the storylines, especially as a woman and dealing with, sexual assault cases, how they were going to be handled dramatically. And so we began, worked on the show, and I got to know Mariska Hargitay. We're both natural brunettes, if you will. And we really hit it off, and she's just got an incredible heart and such a magnificent, magnetic personality. And I was really in awe of what she was doing with the character on the show. And, in between seasons, I would do other work. So, I was starting to production manage and do other types of, producing related. And having a home in the Catskill Mountains, the issue of fracking was coming potentially to New York State and to my community. And I'm speeding up the timeline here for the sake of the interview, but I got involved. I wanted to learn I couldn't believe that fracking would like drilling like they do in Texas where you are. And I was quite concerned, and being in a, bucolic neighborhood and community and wanting to preserve water and make sure things are, really didn't understand. So I got involved. And, having grown up in Pittsburgh, with concerns about pollution, I got involved, and I met Josh Fox, the filmmaker and artist, and we made Gasland, and made a sequel to it to educate the public on the dangers of it and the risks of it, and the sort of what was happening at the corporate level with these companies. And I saw the power of the medium, and I thought, wow, this is incredible, like how the outreach and the possibilities to educate people on a level that we could never do just from an article, like, to have this kind of outreach potential, and leaving no stones unturned, and really using as a way to activate people's interest in education and educationally. So we did 2 films, and then I stayed at the show doing them, and I it was hard. I was working like 20 hours days at night, really working on the doc stuff at night all weekend. And I thought if I could afford the opportunity to do documentaries full time, it was really where my heart lied, that I really wanted to be a part of giving voice and raising consciousness about other people's experiences. And so, Mariska and I for a long time talked about wanting to do a project together. And so, I decided to leave the show. I had been there for 14 years at Law and SVU, and began working on I Am Evidence, which is also an HBO production. And, it led to 48 pieces of legislation. It complemented the work that her foundation does. It's called the Joyful Heart Foundation. And that is where I actually, bringing it full circle to the Tree of Life project, in doing that project, I Am Evidence, and working with survivors of sexual assault, we took a trauma-informed approach, and that approach involved working with a therapeutic team that really informed us on best practices and how we could work with people so they weren't re-traumatized in the process of making the documentary, working with a survivor on the questions that we asked, and making certain that there was absolute comfort with when it was filmed and where it was filmed and how it was filmed, and also letting them have agency in telling their story, that the ones that lived it should tell it. And also they saw iterations of the film to ensure their comfort, and to ensure we were getting the story right. And so that is why and how I'm here with you right now.
That was a hell of an explanation.
Sorry.
I loved every second of it. Perfectly told.
I'm trying to give you the cliff notes, but
no, that was great. That was great.
Okay.
And so we have arrived, at a Tree of Life, and studying documentaries, making some myself, kind of a filmmaker's odyssey to seek out a documentary subject could be kind of tiresome, but it seems like a Tree of Life found you, because you were at a place and a time when it happened, and it's very near and dear to you. So was that kind of what happened? Was that kind of when the shooting in Pittsburgh happened in 2018? Was it something you immediately thought that you had to be a part of?
Yes. I mean, of course, it was such a tremendous shock and heartbreak. I mean, it was, it's stifling when this kind of thing, when this happens, and it's, you want to give people the space they need to deal with what they're dealing with in the moments immediately after. But the only way I thought I could approach it was just in this trauma-informed way, that somehow I could maybe give them a platform and what we could learn from their voices. So I really thought that was the only way to approach it, and that was the only way I would consider doing it. But it was a labor of love. It really was wanting to support and empower their voices, out of enormous love. And as I said, my dear friend Ellie Joseph immediately sent a grant so that I could, hire a local crew. And then over time, I stayed in Pittsburgh at my childhood home for almost 3 years with my father, who I lost during the making of the film in 2020. I just thought it was, if it was meant to be, it would be in that way, that it could only be told from the heart. And if it was an opportunity for them, and I just took it one step at a time. I felt like, how could I respond with my knowledge and my skills? What could I do? Would this be something that would be helpful and useful and educationally available? And so I had no idea what would happen from it, but I just followed my instincts as best I could. And I brought in only the best people that I trusted to help me. And as I said, I had, some relationships already. But I just, really wanted them to have the opportunity to share what they felt was important, and to create this conversation that you experience in the film.
No, for sure. It's definitely a conversation. And in A Tree of Life, I enjoy the fact that the whole kind of element of this documentary is to hear from the people, is to hear their voices. And is that a conscious choice you wanted to see? Because I'd like to think that myself I'm an aficionado of, these types of documentaries and movies, whether it be Holocaust films or documentaries or something, but it's very Claude Landsman of you to kind of how he elevated people's voices and show and talking about the atrocities is what I think this film did in hearing their take on what happened. Was this the conscious choice?
Yes, it was absolutely the only choice. And it was completely intentional. I mean, in my heart, those that lived it should tell it. And I really only wanted to know. I mean, I didn't think talking heads should be telling the story. I thought they should be telling it. And I wanted to learn from it. I wanted to hear what their experiences were, and what they wanted the world to know about the story. I didn't want it to just be that corner of Wilkins and Shady and the soundbite culture we're in. I wanted to go into the in-depth story of it and really cover there were a number of things I wanted to cover. And as you saw, Pittsburgh passed 3 gun laws immediately, and look what happened, to have Brad Orsini, who's in charge of the, national advisor for the Secure Community Network, talk about, if we couldn't get gun laws changed after Sandy Hook, then I don't know that we ever will. To have law enforcement talk that way isn't common. And, to hear from Audrey Glickman say, we have to cause peace to happen. It's an active thing we have to do. To have Rabbi Myers talk about the moral decay of humanity, and that it spreads, it starts with Jews and it spreads out. To have all of them talk with such grace and love about, everyone, all the victims that were so wrongfully taken, to show the humanity, to see the Rosenthal family, trying to survive the loss of their sons and brothers. I really don't think there was any other way to go about it. And I couldn't have done it any other way. That was my vision. And it was all coming from my heart, like I just wanted to give them this opportunity if they wanted it. And the people that are in the film are the ones that were comfortable enough to share their experiences. So there was never any, I didn't contact anybody. One interview led to the next through each of the relationships that were being created as we were going. And they're all very dear to me. I've gotten to know them all very well, and they're remarkable, just absolutely remarkable people, and their courage and their, as I said, kindness and grace. And I think they are great ambassadors for peace.
For sure. And your heart definitely showed through the making of this documentary. And, you brought up a little piece of dialogue there, the moral decay of humanity, which it's very easy to look at it like that. But even in this documentary, you kind of see the light and the beautifulness of people, and where you almost had like another story happening right before your eyes, and of survivors and people talking about what happened, but also contributing money, paying for funerals,
Yes.
people coming out of the woodwork of
Yes.
all nationalities and faiths,
Mhm.
coming to help out just because they know they need to do it, and that's what's right and makes it beautiful. When you were making that, was there like an out of body moment, something like that? You were like, oh, we're getting this, type of thing.
No, I didn't have an out of body experience. I just felt so connected and committed, and also protective of them. It was kept very sacred, with the victims at the forefront of every production and artistic decision. But I think that their courage and willingness and their profound grace and kindness is something that was so striking. I think also one of the things that was fascinating about it is how they learned about each other through the making of the film. And some of them said, "Oh, I didn't know that about, and I didn't know this," and they're becoming, their gatherings that we've had around the film. I was talking with Ellen Serloff, the woman with the dog in the film, Ziva, and the former president of Dor Hadash congregation. And she was talking about Carol Black, who lost her dear brother, Richard, how she's going to be attending her Haftorah, and how much they didn't know each other, now they know each other, and how special that is. And I thought it was really, really meaningful to see that connection, and just their support for the project, like how much they care about the project and wanted to do the work that we need to have happening right now. It's mind boggling that we're approaching 2023 and this is what we're seeing today. Like had hoped that we would be in a much better place by now, unfortunately. But we need to really keep our vigilance very high and keep working at this.
Right. And so that brings me to, the documentary, like kind of shies away from any more or less political talk in the movie, which is great because you want to hear from the survivors and the people. But during the filmmaking of this, were there any ways that you found out how to spread awareness in a creative light, or to stop kind of these acts? Because it's still coming up, as we're talking right now. The whole a very big musician and rapper has made news because of this, and I'd imagine there's going to be more. But was there anything you found out during the making of this on how to spread the awareness and stop all of the hatred and stuff like this from happening?
Well, I think to address the first part of your question politically, I didn't want to, out of respect for the families, they did not want their loved ones' murder to be politicized. But I was in the crowd when the former president came to Pittsburgh. I was right there filming. And on a personal note, I was pleased to see that response that the protesters had. I do think that we do have to hold leadership accountable for what they say and do that can potentially harm groups of people. And I think, leadership should bring people together, not divide people. So I didn't want to I think many filmmakers make films about politicians and what they do and not do, but this film was not about politicians. It was about the survivors and family members. And so that was, I think what we did was the bare minimum in documenting what we understand to be the reasons why this may have occurred. The escalation of the demonization of the migrant caravan, and that somehow George Soros was funding it. And, that Hayes was, behind this. It was the National Day of Shabbat with Hayes. And so we wanted to point those facts out just to orient people on, some of the key points in this unfortunate and tragic story, but we didn't want to focus on it in a way that would have elevated too much more. By creating, when we share a lens into the lives of others, we have the potential to open doors of understanding. And I think there are people that, some people have never met a Jew. They have these preconceived notions of others. I was with the director of the DuPont Awards having dinner, and she told me that, she went to Carnegie Mellon University, and when she got there, someone asked her if she had horns. And I almost fell out of my seat. And this was probably like in the late 80s.
I got the same thing when I went to school in the University of Kansas in Lawrence, and this was in, 2000.
Yeah, and I just think, that dispelling myths and putting the humanity the face of humanity on this and getting people to just be accepting. I think, one of the important things with the film is we're creating a campaign called Love Your Neighbor, which is inspired by Mr. Rogers. And we're going to enlist national peace ambassadors, youth peace ambassadors, to learn how to address hate in their schools and communities and what they can do about it, and give them the tools they need. If kids aren't getting it at home, we want to have programming in community centers that can help them learn acceptance and differences. I mean, it's cool to be different. That's what this country is founded on, our differences, and that's why it's supposed to be the land of immigrants, right? I mean, and so we need to get back to that focus. I think that just by showing up and standing in solidarity and reaching, breaking bread together. One of the rabbis in the film talked about that, we need to come to the table with each other and just break bread and have meals and reach out to our neighbors and just be accepting. There's really simple things, but they really add up, and not go to the lowest common denominator when you're angry about something and blame somebody who has nothing to do with anything that you're angry about. People need to be in tune with what's triggering them and not take it out on people that have nothing to do with it. But I do think politically we have to be very cautious moving forward, because I think we have to make certain that who's in elected positions is not dividing people and blaming people and demonizing groups of people. It's very dangerous, and we have to intervene and vote for people that are going to support communities in need and really demand them to continue to do so after they're elected.
No, I agree for sure. And where can I sign up for this Love Thy Neighbor thing?
Well, I'll let you know. We're getting ready.
Please let me know. I'm signing up for that.
We're working with the Harvard School, and we're building out the actual programming for the program now. But I appreciate that, and I will let you know where we're getting our We're going to launch it in January. We need to. We were just getting to the finish line with the film, and we were working on it simultaneously. We're a small group of folks. We have a limited budget, but we're definitely going to launch it in January and do nationwide screenings and have this conversation around the film. On HBO.com, HBO Documentaries, there is a screening toolkit guide now with resources. So when people see the film, they can go to the resources as a first measure, and then we're going to continue to expand. I also want to encourage everyone to get the safety response training through the Secure Community Network. And I can put you in touch with Brad Orsini to make sure that's happening. I mean, unfortunately, we're living in a world that we're living in with the climate that we are facing. We really need those tools to be ready. God forbid something should happen.
I agreed, very much agreed. So I have a question to ask you. I have two more questions for you. One's a serious one, one's a fun one. So serious, go with the fun one. You want to go fun one first? The which one?
The good news first.
The good news first. Okay, good news. All right. So I've got to ask. I ask everybody this, and I'm always excited to hear everybody's answer. But it's obvious. You've worked in the industry a long time. You're a cinematic aficionado.
Oh,
Are there any? Okay. Are there any particular scenes in documentaries or films that have helped shape your creative life that stuck with you for a long time?
I think what I like most about documentaries is they're based in reality, and they're from the truth of people's experiences. There are many documentaries I could cite that would, answer that specifically, but I think that they're an opportunity for us to learn about situations we may not know much about, and I really think they should be supported more and given as much credit and support as they can, because they're very hard to make and they're often very low budgets. And but I think we also have to be responsible for what we're working with our material. I really just think that it's an opportunity to get a glimpse of something that we probably would have never come across in our lives had we not spent time watching that documentary. And I think they have enormous power to illuminate and enlighten and Some of them are also really fun, like learning, like biopics, learning about people's lives, and people's struggles, and our ability to have compassion and support for those struggles.
No, I completely agree. And, something, a very simple documentary can be something on a bigger plane and shed light on whatever subject it is.
Definitely, yeah.
I
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. I like that. All right. The serious question we'll end with.
Okay.
So I'm curious about this too. So I had the pleasure to talk with Dr. Michael Berenbaum, one of the leading Holocaust scholars, and a while ago, and he's part of the Shoah Foundation. He has been a consultant on many a film dealing with it. And one of the questions I asked him was, in these films that you're a consultant for, in such as the elements in this documentary of what happened, the shootings, how do you consult on this, and are these things true? And his answer was, these things are true, but what happened in real life is much worse. And so when you're making this movie and you have Holocaust survivors and you have people that witnessed this, was there anything left out of the doc or a story you heard that kind of goes in line with what he said, that it's much worse?
Yes, there were details. I think other people who have reported on the story share those details, or other writers. There's 2 writers. I don't want to mention their names, but you'll know who they are if you Google it. I did not want to share any kind of details that would be trauma triggering. The weapon did things, and it's not where I think our focus should lie at this moment for this project, but it was horrifying on every possible level, is what I can tell you. I don't want to spend much time on it out of respect for the families and everybody in the film, because we want to honor and we want to remember the good and stay with that, so there are things, yes, that I learned, but I didn't think they added value to this particular story for the purposes of our intention in making this film.
Right. And I mean, that's the scary thing, is that it could always be worse. But I'm with A Tree of Life and an HBO to round this out, there's so much beautiful people from unexpected places in this documentary. And that's what I loved about it so much. And I think it's for everybody to see, it teaches and helps you learn that different is good and to prevent it, right?
Yes, absolutely. That's what we're doing.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Trish.
It was a rainy morning.
We all went down into our sanctuary space.
I turned around, and there was the man with the gun.
Shots fired, shots fired. They have an active shooter in the building.
We got a text that just said active shooter at Tree of Life Synagogue.
Several persons barricaded inside.
Jerry and I looked at each other. Jerry's a doctor, I'm a nurse, and thought that somehow we could be helpful. So we moved in the direction of the gunfire.
Suspects talking about all these Jews need to die.
There's a great fear among people that the culture of white America has been diminished.
These groups are emboldened, they're empowered, and they're vocal.
The days when synagogues just leave their doors open, I think those days are gone.
When you think about what can come of this sort of situation, you need to think about the values for which the victims stood.
Rest your head.
Whether Jewish or Catholic or Muslim, everybody seemed touched because this could happen to them.
The earth might shake, the winds may blow.
Because of misconceptions about both of our communities, a lot of people were surprised to see the Muslim community step up and help the Jewish community. Our religions are very similar, our values are similar.
So raise a candle in their name.
Parkland has been here. The church in Charleston, they were here.
When there's a shooting, we text each other, because you just know what each other's feeling.
It's about how we can change other people's lives in a positive manner, because that is what the victims would have wanted.
Their memories really are a blessing for all of us, and part of them continues to live on within us.